All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming on your Saturday morning to just help us reboot the barn conversation at the Veronda-Falletti Ranch. And just some housekeeping stuff. There's a sign-in sheet at the back of the room. Make sure you sign in if you have not yet. We do have restrooms, women's restroom down this hallway, men's this way. We have some waters in the back counter if you would like a water while you're here. I don't think it's gonna be that long of a meeting, but if you feel like some water, it's there. And we could have some people on Zoom. So if you think it's weird, if you ask a question and I repeat it to you, that's so people on Zoom can hear it also. I'm Damien Obid. I'm the city manager here in Cotati. We have Ashley Wilson, who's our recreation manager here. And we also have Mitch Connor, who works for Archaeologics. They helped us through these initial conceptual phases of the project. So, and we have, thank you. And we have Susan Harvey, who's the mayor of Cotati as well. Yes. Yeah, can't let her go unnoticed. So, all right. This is as I mentioned, the barn workshop. This is our second one. So if you don't recall when the first one was, it's for a good reason because it was in the end of 2021. It's been a long time. So this really, just to not get everyone's expectations up too high, this is more of a reboot of that conversation so that we can hopefully make some forward progress and get this thing going. All right, so a little history. In 2008, the city purchased the Veronda-Falletti Ranch, which is, I think you all know, but it's the property across the street here that that's being used as a farm right now. As part of the, we purchased it through a matching grant agreement, and this is through the Ag and Open Space District. So the deal is that they, when they're a participant in a property purchase, they put an open space easement on the property, which prescribes certain uses, or I guess more correctly, prohibits certain uses. Like, for example, it can't be developed into housing or something like that. It has to maintain its original use.
What was that last bit?
It has to maintain a lot of its original uses. So the open space easement has very prescribed uses that can occur there. And then by default, anything that's not described is not allowed. In 2017, the city built the pathway. So we have the pathway along East School in El Rancho and the little picnic area on the corner of East School and El Rancho. So we built that in 2017, sort of get things going. We put a new fence around the property as well. We had a cow get out. I think it was running down El Rancho, so we had to. The fence was part of the project. In 2018, we issued an RFP for a ranch operator. And we had two groups propose. Ultimately, the council awarded the project to Farmster. And this was through via what's called the license agreement. It's kind of like a lease, but for governmental property. It's a license agreement. In 2020, we did extensive refurbishment of the farmhouse. And so that's the small white building in the front here near the corner. And also reconstructed the water tower. So there was a water tower there before, but it was basically, the foundation was, I'll just say it was in such a shape that it wouldn't make sense to spend the money to try to refurbish that thing. So we basically tore it down, rebuilt it into essentially the same looking type structure, but fully compliant with code, and actually people could actually walk into the structure. The old structure, it would just be a pretty thing that we could look at, even if we spent just as much money on it. So the council decided just to rebuild that. 2021, the city council entered into license agreements. So re-entered into a license agreement with Farmster and also with Amamatati, also known as Sandy Loam, to operate the ranch. And so Farmster does a lot of the horticulture and animal operations. Sandy Loam or Amamatati does a lot of the educational, especially child and up through high school type education. There's some overlap in the older age groups, but that's sort of big picture what they do. We had an initial workshop. This is back, as I mentioned, in 2021. So it's been a while. So we're just restarting the conversation now. And then last year, the council adopted an urban ag ordinance. And the relevance here is it changed the zoning on the property to allow the operations that are occurring there, as well as also allowed other things like farm stands and things like that for agricultural products. And then I don't expect you to know to see the detail on this, but this is the existing property. But basically, some of the main areas in the front corner, number 4, that's that's a little it's a playground area right now, but it's it's a playground area. It's an area for play. But 3, 2, and 5, those are the structures. The barns that we're talking about today are 7 and 8. Those are the existing barns that are out there. And then at this scale, I won't go through it in detail. You guys, I think, know the property. Just some pictures of both the property and some things around it. So the top left, that's the reconstructed water tower. The middle top, that's the farmhouse that was refurbished. The top right is the corner at El Rancho and East School, where we have the picnic area and the pathways. And then across the street on the bottom left is Church of the Oaks, which when we did the farmhouse and the water tower, we were pulling some of those elements into our structure. So they complemented each other, those sort of things. And then the bottom right is, you can see one barn and part of another barn that we're talking about tonight or today. So I mentioned conservation easement. These are relative to our conversation today. These are I guess the most applicable parts of the conservation easement. I'll get back to that first bullet in a second, but the maximum allowed building area is 10,000 square feet. So the conservation easement limits the site coverage with structures to 10,000 square feet. The maximum building height is 24 feet. So if you look at the water tower, that's as high as it could go. That's essentially 24 feet. And then new structures need to be constructed sort of around the existing developed area. So in other words, we wouldn't build like a big barn out in the field somewhere where there's not already structures. And then getting back to that first bullet. So back in 2015, we performed a structural analysis and site evaluation, basically. And this is where I mentioned earlier, the water tower just got reconstructed. That this was one of the things that came out of that evaluation, is there was no way to really save that and actually have it be usable than anything other than something to look at. And we want it to be usable that people could go into. So we ripped that down and built a new one that looked very similar. But it had similar findings with the 2 barns. The barns are not structurally sound and really not fit for people to go into from a building code perspective. And then I'll just run through this real quick. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just, I'm happy to stop it anywhere along here. But current programming, we have a variety of animal, and these are through our partners, Amamatati and Farmster. We have a variety of animal-related education, horticultural education, regular volunteer and youth days that we have at the ranch. They're regularly engaging with city recreation programs and summer camps. We have regular preschool field trip programs where they come to the ranch. And that's all the preschools. And you guys probably know that we have the market cornered for preschools in Sonoma County here. We have a lot of them. And anyway, so we have a lot of field trips. We have middle school and high school workshops and events, and elementary after-school enrichment programs. So, and they're all agricultural themed. There's a lot of nature, hands-on type themes. So I'm trying to leverage the ranch environment for this, for all these activities. All right, so back in 2021, these were our takeaways from that meeting, and I don't expect anyone to remember back then, but that's why we're talking about it again today, just to, kind of reset on this. So there's currently 2 barns out there, right? And that's the general sense that we would move forward with 2 barns, except one barn would be more of an interactive type livestock barn, where basically where you can safely view and interact with animals. So whether that's, small like goats, sheep, whatever, it's almost like small pens where, children and families can interact. You also could have educational opportunities there as well. But the idea was that there would be a livestock type barn, and that would, so that'd be one of the 2. The other one would be more of a multi-purpose barn, sort of, we call it the animal barn and the human barn. And we, that was the feedback that we got, like, because animal barns could be kind of, smelly. And so you have a separate space for people to hang out and do other things. So the multi-purpose barn would be more for like small meetings, small events for recreation, local agricultural events and education, local like food event type things, small group events, and so that was sort of the general kind of feedback for the 2 structures. And then I'll jump down a couple bullets. The other thing that we took away from that meeting was integrating historical elements and displays throughout both the indoor and outdoor spaces. So finding ways to fully integrate them so that they can be available and ideally passively available for people. So when you're there, you can read about them, interact with them, see them. And then utilize the outdoor space. There's a lot of good outdoor space around the barns, so utilize those for both education, small events, agricultural uses, and historical elements too. And then farm stand, putting a farm stand together, and with the ag ordinance that allowed that activity to happen. So that's something we're talking about now, about how that might happen. So we were just working on, after that meeting, we were just working on sort of a space concept, like how would things lay out, what general sizes would they be, and these are all pretty rough, but you can see the white buildings there, 1 and 2. Those are the barn buildings.
If you want to be active, 1 is a barn, 2 is a brewery. It's not a barn. So it doesn't matter if you don't want to be active according to preservation. These structures. It was used for chicken. It wasn't a barn.
Yeah. So number 2 is a brooder. Structure 2 is a brooder house, and number 1 is a barn. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the barn, number 1, the brooder house, number 2, and the general programming. This just follows on to the prior slide, where the space 1, the barn, would be there'd be potentially some level of kitchen there, exhibit areas. So that's like historical elements, office storage, meeting room, an outdoor meeting space, outdoor meeting area around it. The brooder house, number 2, would be used. The idea is that it'd be used for chickens still, but also have small animals there as well. So in hay storage, wash area, basically stalls and storage for animals. And then the stars on the map, those kind of orange colored stars, those are just conceptual, like outdoor displays in addition to whatever would be incorporated into the buildings themselves. but there's opportunities for outdoor displays of things as well, whether that's signboards or actually physical things. And then the other stuff, I will point out one more. There's a small gray square. It's labeled 13. And again, in this concept, the idea was that would just be a covered outdoor space, like a trellised area or something like that, potentially. Yep. And then these use diagrams, this was just to get an idea of how it actually might work in practice. And so on the top left, if there was a market, like a little kind of an agricultural market or something happening there that day, then you could put these little easy up, like 10 by 10 tents up, and the green dots are people. So just how the space might work in that type of use. The middle one is the animal exhibition. If we're having an animal, like a animal day with people, whether that's just whether it's chickens or whether it's other small animals. And then I will say in the animal exhibition, it doesn't show on here, but there's the opportunity for outdoor pens as well, just to the north of the, to the west, I guess, of the brooder house on the upside. And then historical tours, there's also opportunities, obviously, for that too, for the outdoor elements. But then there's, like I said earlier, to be looking to integrate that stuff within the buildings also. And then these were just some, I think some of the images back in 2021 when we were showing people images of what these spaces could look like. These are just some images I think that were people seemed to like at the time. So structures and spaces on this one. Next slide. And then outdoor areas. So there's seating and shade and landscaped areas. And then some of the materials. And so one of the comments was, trying to incorporate a lot of the feel and the look of the existing barns, the barn and the brooder house, into the new structures. So, so there's that. There's like, pathways that people could safely walk on, so that are ADA accessible. And yeah, so that's it on that. And this is when I was talking about spaces for people to interact. This is what I meant. So, where you have a place where you could interact with an animal, learn about the animals. There's aside from just visiting, there's a variety of ways that you can incorporate educational programming into a setup like this, where you could not have to worry about a small child around a cow, for example. So there'd be that kind of setup in what's now the brooder house. All right, so as I mentioned, today was really just a reset on a conversation that had gotten delayed because of, well, there's just a lot of other things that happened and it just got delayed. So we're just trying to restart the conversation now and then start eventually developing initial design drawings, and hopefully, not the concepts. Because what you looked at today was literally just a square on the property. We don't have anything beyond that. So once we understand the uses and get feedback on the layouts or the wants, then we can use that to start thinking about what the space would look like, and also initial design of the barns. One thing I am actually interested in is we have right now, the barns are single-story barns. The barn and the brooder house are single-story. And I also am curious if there's any thoughts about single versus two-story out there. I mean, obviously to stay under 24 feet because that's the limit. but that's what we'd be, that's what I'm hoping to get, that kind of feedback, so that we can move on to at least an initial concept or like rough design for what these would look like, what the space would look like. And the city doesn't, we don't have the funding to build this, so this is a conversation down the road. But eventually, once we get the concept designs together, and hopefully we're all aligned on where the direction we're heading, then we can use that as a tool to fundraise and develop the funding to actually build the structures. So we do have a project page on the city website. So if you want to know what's going on with the project at any time, you always can go there. That's where we keep all of our public works projects. You can follow that QR code to the project page if you would like. But you also can sign up there and get updates as we add things to that page. It'll update you. So if you're curious to stay involved as the project moves through the process, then you can also do that. All right, so I talked a lot. And like I said, just not to beat a dead horse, but we hadn't really made a whole lot of progress since the last time we talked about it. But I just, like I said, want to reset on it so that we can make progress on it and actually move this forward, and hopefully create something that the community will love and have a lot of good opportunities to pull people in and have them interact with the ranch. So, are there any questions at this point? Do we have anyone else? All right. Okay. All right. Comments? Yeah. Yeah.
When you mentioned that you're going to basically turn these group house into a mixed use animal thing, if your intention is to actually keep chickens in there, when you have a lot of outdoor pens indoors, you're basically creating more ways for raccoons, skunks, and whatever to just get into the barn, basically for chickens or whatever other birds are in there. Basically, to have a whole area that's completely segmented off with hardware cloth, if that's your intention. It would probably be more in tune with the historical aspect to keep the fruit house and build another building to have, and then that one you can add your second story. And then you have the fruit house to basically pay homage to everything Adi and all the history of all the chicken houses used to be close to that.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry. The comment was that it would be better to keep the brood house as a brood house only for the safety of the chickens, but also for the historical preservation piece of it, and put the mixed animal barn in a separate structure with maybe a 2-story, like a hayloft above. Right? All right.
I want to raise my hand a lot today. So
yeah.
I want to address, because I don't remember to go later, part about possible 2-story. And I would say, it would behoove the city and all of us, all the interested parties, keeping things at 1 story. The only reason I say that is to preserve the historic integrity of the buildings. What you do on the inside when you're refurbishing the historic building, you have a lot more room to play with. But that visual may be something, and if there's a still need for storage and there's a need for a hayloft, that's something we don't know where of, and that's an issue. But I would say, unless it's really necessary, if we could keep things kind of level, you have that same visual that you did 40, 50, 100 years ago of the property in general. I would just throw that out there. I'm not saying that we should do that, but just say it's.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the comment was to preserve the historical integrity of the property. Yeah. It's we should strongly consider keeping them one story, right?
Oh, no.
He's never through, yeah.
So a possibility is if you keep the two buildings, which I don't understand why you would. I don't understand why you would put a big structure in there. I thought that one of the things you were doing with this company was to preserve the historical feeling of a ranch, not a conglomeration of something that could be used without that in mind. And I don't see that either in the structures. If you put bigger structures on there, I think you guys did a wonderful job with the house, but it doesn't function and won't function from what I understand as a historical view of what a ranch house used to look like. Or the water tower, it's no longer used that same way. Okay, but if something should be. And one of the things that you could do, potentially, instead of having the brooder house all for chickens, is most of it for chickens, and then have a historical site in there if you need to have more room for meetings on the inside. But to change those single walled buildings, I mean, I don't know. As a Veronda, I talked to the other barbecue, Morrow, and she's about fit to be tied, and she knows Jenny would be about fit to be tied. And luckily she's here that, or to see this. But I also talk to other relatives, and we look at it and go, what? What are you doing? That's not a ranch anymore. I don't know how you're going to say that.
Yeah. I think the comment was just keep it the same, basically, right? That's what you're saying.
No, I didn't say this. I mean, that's what my comment is?
Well,
No, the historical preservation of the ranch. It's a ranch. It's not a conglomerate of little pathways here and something here and kids stuff all over the place. There's fine to have kids all over the place, but that's not what it looks like. It does not look like a ranch. And if you take the barns out or use them in a different way and don't have those single wall red barns, as that gentleman said about historical Italian using having so many chickens and chicken ranches and chicken barns that are falling down, why wouldn't the city preserve one as a chicken barn? I mean, that's part of what you would want to do, wouldn't you?
I mean, we definitely want to preserve as much as we can, but we also want it to be usable.
I'm not saying it can't be usable. You mean those barns at all, those structures cannot be, they have to be replaced?
Well, so the question is, do the structures have to be replaced? And when we looked at them, when we looked at the structure of them, we can't have the public in there. And the initial assessment at least was that if we spent the money to kind of get it to a structural place where it would be safe, then I think there'd be very limited opportunities to go inside the structure. That was the structure. That was the feedback of the structural report. Is that you can make it like so it stands up and it's not a safety issue, but to have people inside it is a whole different question.
But it seems that it's part of whoever is working over there and the city to figure out how to preserve the look of that structure.
Yeah.
As well as the single wall constructions for some of them. I mean, I don't care if you have that inside of the wall. But the difference in the construction is part of the historical aspect.
Yeah, so in terms of the difference in construction for like an old barn or a brooder house construction versus some sort of modern construction technique, I mean, they're going to be completely different, of course. But, you know, to John's point, I mean, you can do a lot to make it look very much like, at least on the exterior, look like the original structure, you know. But on the inside, there's not, I don't know. We'd have to look into that if there's any opportunities there. Because anything like that wouldn't meet any sort of building code, you know. But the original structures don't meet building codes. So I mean, we can do a lot to make the outside look, you know, very much like the original structure. But the inside, I don't know. We'd have to explore that.
But then the other thing I think that's important is the intent. And I don't see a ranch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't even see the chickens. I walk along.
Yeah, well, they've been inside a lot because there's been avian flu, and I don't know what the thing was, but they had to keep them all penned up so they didn't basically have to be cold. But there's a disease going around, avian disease. That's why they've all been locked up recently. Yeah. So I mean, I think the point of the ranch, though, from the community standpoint, is obviously to preserve a lot of the historical elements, but then also have it something that the community can engage in and be useful for the community to have educational events, learn about the historical aspects, learn about ranching, learn about horticulture. That was the intent.
I think it's that.
Understand? Okay. Any other comments?
Just one on the chickens, with the urban ag ordinance that went out, you have a threshold. 1,000 site characteristic of the body so keeping that luxury chicken hair some people use and you have other livestock. Those idiots think. I think that's where the alignment of the conservation easement provided us back in 2008 and new development on site. Different program. There's a broad strokes. Some ways.
Yeah, and there currently is a limit on the number of birds that can be there under that ordinance. Mm-hmm. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but well, we had more, like for example, we had more birds than were allowed so some of it was grandfathered, right? Because it just is what it was when the ordinance was adopted.
If the urban ordinance is taking it at its word, it's not complying. So
yeah,
it's grandfathered in. So
it definitely allows, and I'm not saying it does or doesn't meet the requirements in the ordinance because I don't recall off the top of my head, but there is an allowance for like farm animals and things like that. How many exactly? I don't know. I mean, right here, I don't know, but. Yeah. Yes.
So I neglected to say that I am here also representing the Society. Mm-hmm. And we had submitted a proposal just as a rough draft idea. I mean, the date I have on this version of plan is August of 2021. And our interest at that time still holds true, was the use of the one barn, and you're looking at the two barns, the one on the left, and I think it could go in either barn, honestly, was some kind of an accessible walking path going through the building in a circular fashion that would have some interpretive panels explaining either a piece of equipment that is there and how it was used. Some external panels too, talking about whether there's critters in the pen or just in general. So, I mean, the nexus I see is that, you know, the interest that we have, the interest that Monster has, and the interest of, wow, sorry, what's the name of this? Sandy loam. I was going to say soil loam. No. Sandy loam. I mean, I think there's a tie between all of those, and the real key. And I went back and I was a part of Cynthia. No. Yeah, at SSU. I was a part of her thesis. Was I reading her? That's not the way.
Yeah.
And going back to what she said, that, you know, I think what we want to do is we want to educate the public of what happened there, what's happening there, what may happen. And I think all of this does kind of tie together. So, I mean, again, from our standpoint, from the Historical Society standpoint, we've gone through, we've cleaned out both of the barns. We're still cleaning out dust from facial hair, even though it was a year ago. It was really transformative what those places out. And as you know, Ed Gillard was literally single-handedly put together this binder that we left for a copy of the city that showed all of the different items that we recovered. He labeled them, he tagged them, a little tiny bit of research, just so we could inventory what's in there. And some things I think could easily be used, you know, for display purposes. Other things probably not. So I want to just keep the education theme going, because I think that's really critical in however this transforms. And I'm just going to probably keep saying that over and over again until something really does happen over there. But we're, you know, the Historical Society, we've committed that we would put funding towards this project in some way, shape, or form. And I have some experience in doing this when I worked at Point Reyes for 36 years. We have a ranch called the Pierce Point Ranch. And I believe it was highlighted from you guys. Yeah, it was highlighted on that one Zoom that we had. And that is a place without any cameras. It's very static. You go there and there's this cadre of buildings, but they all have interpretive panels explaining, you know, what transpired from the schoolhouse, the bunkhouse, the dairy barn, etc. And I think this will be much more alive, you know, especially with some animals.
Yeah.
Well, John, so yeah, I think in addition to you know, displaying contemporary, you know, for the theme was all, and so there's a way to use artifacts of
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with both of you. I mean, that's been the goal, is to integrate the physical pieces, but also the educational pieces. Yeah.
My name's Maria, and I'm also and I have certain questions about the changes to the farmhouse as a meeting place with a kitchen. and why that needs to be duplicated in the warrants when it could happen.
Well, the kitchen in the farmhouse isn't really a, like, for example, it's not a kitchen that you really could do much in. It's pretty limited. Yeah.
So I think, one of the issues. The farmhouse. And so we sort of think that. I mean, actually, why do we need that?
Well, so some of the feedback that we got earlier on was to do both demonstrations with like food type demonstrations, but also potentially have, people that make small batches of stuff come in and be able to prepare like jams or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of it was based on the educational. So for example, you're at your house, you have a fruit tree, what do you do with it, right? And then here's a canning class, or here's a, whatever class. And that was some of the earlier feedback we got. And then that would be the intent, for example, of the kitchen.
A lot of the stuff used to be done outside with the process. That's where you have space, you wouldn't have a full production line of stuff inside anyway. The kitchen wouldn't be larger than you want. Have all of the plugins outside, and then you can have all the display and everyone can gather around and watch. That's the intent. You have to have an open kitchen anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a like usership standpoint, the site was beautiful and very static when we first started, but we have a question. Utilize these opportunities, staff, current license, pair them with future community needs. Right now, like stock part, but everything can be outside. More robust facilities that health code department that are easy for them to come in. It's all outdoor sink, we do all our harvest, it's all, so more credibility, I think.
Yeah. Does that? Yeah. I was just curious if you had any other questions, that's all. Yeah. Yeah.
So I also wanted to point out that the vice president of our board, Martin, did send in a letter.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you guys are doing official.
No.
This probably not. Sadly, I can't give you cite what his concerns were, but he did have some concerns. Animal presence, having the animals more peaceful since that's what people love. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the letter, but I was going to just try to summarize a couple of these points. So maybe let me look over it again. I just don't want that lost.
Sure.
He was able to.
Yeah. I think it was animal presence or visibility, animal visibility, and some comments about site cleanliness. First comments.
And about contact.
And what?
The historical society was not contact.
Oh, well, we did contact you guys, but via email. But it doesn't. We don't need to. We need to talk about it now.
Kind of a serious issue. Because how many people are here? Who from the public is here that found out through the city? Or is it just people who already have an interest, found out about the meeting? I found out about it from Dustin. Even though I follow the city Facebook page, And
Yeah.
so I'm concerned that one, communication with the historical society has been extremely limited. I don't know what happened to your email, but it would have been nice for us to notify our membership that this was happening, since we have in the past committed a huge portion of our assets to the possibility of this being developed. So I have to say that this is inaccurate.
Okay. I mean, just so everyone knows, we went through the normal process where website, social media, mailing 500 feet around the ranch, some direct emails to people that we knew were stakeholders.
I'm a stakeholder and I never hear anything.
And I checked it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that it was sent to that email, but anyway, we don't have to debate this now. I'd be happy to come to the board meeting and we can have a much longer conversation about this. Yeah. All right. Yes.
The need for it's only allowed 30 birds on the property. Um, it's outdoor care.
Yeah, the brood house idea was really to preserve the historical element, not that there couldn't be chickens outdoors also, but that people could also see historically how chickens were kept and raised and how the eggs were cleaned and, just like how things used to happen on the ranch.
But it still makes sense.
Yeah, that was the idea.
River houses have ways of having.
Yeah,
and
but I
then
mean, but they're controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're fenced in. But
Yeah.
then they get in, and generally farmer has to, close the little door. Yeah, but it's big. Well, it depends on how you work. Still, you wouldn't be, even if the brewer house were used, you could use the brewer house as part chicken and part, historical, display.
Mhm.
It wouldn't have to be, the whole thing wouldn't have to be for the chicken.
That's basically
See-
partition, though, the wall down the middle in order to keep the two very separate.
Correct.
Well, so I think something that would be cool, where you can see the old, kind of how eggs were collected previously, how they were washed previously, some of the equipment that you guys, I think you have, and put it all out there, but not only just as a static display, but hopefully, something that would be, you could actually show people how it went, back.
I think from an architectural standpoint, take that structure and partition it. Picture it sort of down the middle, whichever direction. I just think a section could be river house, another section could be either small animals or interpretive exhibits or both.
Mhm.
But again, I don't think it'd be a difficult thing to probably put in some kind of a wall there that would allow the chickens their space. And then public space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, lots of possibilities. Yeah, but I think fundamentally having the, aside from the outdoor space for the chickens, but also having the brooder space so that we could have those conversations. For, like this is how, like they used to do it. This is how the eggs used to be collected, cleaned, packaged. I think all that would be, really a pretty cool use of that space.
One thing I wanted to just say about the two-story, I said earlier, now upstairs, Dustin probably speak on this more than I can, but I know he usually gets. It would be nice to have space for that.
It just has to be dry. You have to keep the hay in the dry space.
But it's not.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I mean, typically get more for less. So, indoor is a lot small lot like the. front doors.
Yeah, storage is an issue right now. I know we hear about it regularly just in our operations now. So whatever we do has to incorporate storage.
Those buildings went through construction.
Yes. Yeah, both buildings went through a structural review. All right.
So can I ask the question in the this answer? So when you look at those buildings, you find out raising them. I saw partial foundation. A lot of it was rock, which is great for your backyard, not so great for public space.
Yes.
So is that the intent? You have to take the buildings down, basically start from scratch.
Yes, that would be, so we'd have to build a real foundation underneath it. And then when you rebuild it, it's going to be, you have to build it to certain standards. But as far as the aesthetics of it go, I mean, there's a lot of options there. Yeah.
And the reuse of extra siding would be, that would again help with the historic integrity and look of the structure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be cool to reuse a lot of that siding.
There's good wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some bad wood, but there's a lot of good wood.
Yeah, anything that's not in contact with the ground is probably in decent shape. Yeah.
And frankly, I would like to see some part of that, either of those structures, so that you can see how they were made. You're not gonna see that again. There's almost no, well, you can come down to my house.
Yeah.
But other than that, the chicken houses that are at my house and the are all single wall constructions. They were just up and built later in those. But still, you're not going to see that very often. And I think it's important to see that. And I don't know how to preserve it. I just know that it can be.
Yeah.
If we put our heads together, I know it can be. I'm not saying a whole building, Vivian. I'm saying even a wall, not even a whole wall, maybe a wall like the size of the window.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, oh my God, nothing can touch that ranch. That ranch is going to be touched all over the place. When I was a kid, it's very different.
Yeah.
But it still looks more like it did.
Right. So preserving elements of the original barn constructions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whatever the future construction is. Yeah.
Treat the buildings like an artifact.
Yes, yes.
I think where it gets tricky, just to interject something, is when you bring the public into the conversation. It changes the whole restoration. I saw a great example of this. I went to school in Montana. Next to the Museum of the Rockies, there's literally an old homestead. It was quite fascinating. They did a lot of work. But it's very clear that there was some serious upgrades. There were stairs that didn't even close to the code. It was an amazing representation. But I think the line that we're straddling here is what's an artifact? We're telling a story about history. And what needs to be modernized in order to be fishing operation or farming. And that's usually driven by how you use the space, but it's definitely driven. So I think that's our side, how we hope it's understood. As far as this 1 and 2 story, I think you got plenty of site out there. That's a great idea. Not like sure land.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about spreading out into the pastures. But
Yeah, it's more the conservation easement limits that would limit, the footprints of things.
So that's negotiation.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of being an art, not just chickens running in and out, and livestock and so forth. How they built this.
And there could be a possibility if you're gonna redo those buildings anyway, of moving them back a little bit, not moving the building, moving the site of the building back, leaving the original wall of one of the buildings like, or part of the wall, maybe a
Mhm.
corner with the foundation, and putting that under a, you know, a little.
Yeah, leaving part of the building and protect it from weather.
Yes, and
Yeah.
protect the elements, so it's an outside structure. I mean, it's been in the elements for how many years now?
Yeah.
You know, it's not gonna go anywhere. Well, but, you know, it could be protected to a certain degree. And I'm, again, not talking about a whole thing. Part of it, sure.
Have you seen the Carrillo building? But no, but there's an example.
No, it's left.
I mean, you build a roof over it. It's an exhibit. That's people aren't gonna post.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's just two things that I have in mind. And one is, I mean, all you have to do is go to the Presidio in San Francisco and see an exhibit in which they reveal the original Adobe wall.
I was literally just gonna say that, and I heard you talking, Bobby, I just, that one off my head, and I'm wondering, if there's a way to actually create that information on how these.
Really useful.
Yeah.
The other question. is what the original, what the site looked like. And if I'm not mistaken, there's at least one, not more buildings that have fallen down since that time that should be allowable as some kind of storage.
By 12.
Yeah.
Storage shed.
Right. It,
2007. Fell over public works, but I think that was.
Yeah.
into their assessment.
So that's an opportunity
it, yeah, it was. So so there was the one shed, the one 10 by 12 that was already leaning over pretty hard when the property was purchased, and it fully went over a couple years after that. And the 10,000 square foot limit was based on that, I believe. And it's, so right now with the structures, with the ranch house, which is the one here on the corner, the water tower, and then the barn and the brooder house, those four structures, that's about half of 10,000 square feet. It's about 5-ish thousand square feet. So if we deconstruct the two structures and then rebuild them in some fashion, hopefully preserving a lot of these elements, I think we would be okay still. I don't know that we're going to be right up against 10,000 square feet, which is the limit. Not that our goal is to hit the limit on the open space area, but the point is, I don't think we're at that limit. I think we have some space. I think so, yeah. We do have some space, yeah.
The requisites. I know there was some issues with sales of items. But as far as the buildings are concerned, or where buildings once stood, you know, if we wanted to put some footage up, are we restricted?
No, just the general restriction that they should be in the general area that they were before. So we don't just start putting buildings in random places on the spot, on the site. So we have them all roughly in the general area there. All right. Anything else? Looking at you, Joan.
When I walk by the sign, I get really sad. I can't. I can't see.
Yeah, that's
We
Yeah,
were
we're-
prescribed some input from our vets about how big the sheep in particular goats are, so that's where, you know, they are in the guide
I understand that, but I'm just saying,
We're
I
trying to
can't
be more
see it.
visible, yes.
Yeah, no,
And
I understand.
Should be a sign doesn't
yeah,
connect.
the sign is anyhow.
Oh.
Yeah,
There could be shade.
yeah, yeah. I get it. I think,
I mean, you have advertising on there for the two weekends, and there's a reason you put it on that front, gate, not gate, but fence. It looks great. The advertisement looks great. I thought, oh, this is gonna be really interesting. And that's what the animals.
Mhm.
That, you know, we see kids and we see gardens a lot. But we don't see a lot of animals. And when the animals were out, not necessarily not on the right side of the road. But it could be around by the house somewhere. You'd have to make some changes. I don't know, done over there exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're missing something. You didn't put an advertisement on the backside of that, on the backside of the fence. Over on the other, at the other end of the town. Because there would be no point in it. Or there would. You put it where people see it.
yeah, well, West Sierra, it's a
Yeah.
busy road. Yeah. But I understand your point. I think, just making the animals more visible to people.
Yeah, and
Because that,
that's different than, I mean, my great aunt and uncle didn't have animals out front. I mean, my Lord loved that, they wouldn't do that at all.
Yeah.
They were in the back, that was garden or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, something has to change. And we want to see it as a way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Working range.
Yeah. You know, animal visibility is important. And not, I mean, I know, it's not just you. I hear that a lot. That's one of the primary things that draw people into the property is the animals. So making them visible is important. Yeah. All right. All right. All right, guys. Well,
I'm just kind of thinking about.
yes. Yeah. Just no ding dongs for the sheep, Yeah. All right. Right. Yeah, no human food. All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your Saturday to come down and talk with us about the ranch. And like I said, this is a reboot from the earlier conversation. So we're just at the very start of it. I will be coming. You have a meeting, a historical society meeting next week, which I'd like to come to. I tentatively put it on my calendar so we can have a conversation as well. I don't know who I should.
I mean, just a review. Okay.
The 15th.
That's tomorrow.
No.
No.
No,
You're not.
November.
Oh,
We've had
Yeah,
our.
November.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, November. Yeah.
We had our October meeting early on schedule. Yeah.
It's not on the 18th. 18th of October.
You know what? I gave you that date, but we
Yeah.
actually, that's my error.
Oh, you moved it.
Met
Yeah.
last week.
It's the 15th.
Yeah.
November.
we can end it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
You know what I'm saying?